Smith.
Today, the three new books we have for you are a Chinese historical fiction, a coming-of-age educational school drama comedy, and a multicultural mystery. First up, we have the Chinese historical fiction called The God of Luck by Ruthanne Lum McCunn.
Ah Lung and his wife, Bo Si, live in a 19th century village that raises silkworms for a living. Their marriage was arranged, but the relationship is one of true love. Then, like hundreds of thousands of other Chinese men, Ah Lung is kidnapped and shipped across the Pacific to be a slave in the deadly guano mines in the coast of Peru. Husband and wife are determined to be reunited, but the God of Luck presides over their ultimate fate.
Move. Get out of the way. Hurry. I tried but could not. Hands fumbled against my pants, grabbed a leg, a corner of my jacket, a sleeve, a shoulder, then pulled me deeper into the darkness just as a body, tumbling through the hatch, slammed the deck with a jarring thud, a garbled grunt. There were more whispered warnings, sounds of shuffling, dragging, sobs, faint groans that were somehow all the more awful for being muted. Another body toppled down. No sooner did flesh and bone thump than a heavy gate clanged over the latch. While it was yet reverberating, a metal bolt rasped. As it locked into place, the sobs intensified, and it seemed to me I heard Bo Si's cries as well as my own. That passage was obviously the one where they have just kidnapped Ah Lung. Now, one thing about this book, first let's set the stage a little more. It's the 19th century, and it's China.
Right. China and
Peru.
Peru,
right. So, us as Americans, we don't necessarily think of that as a setting for a book that is basically about slavery, people being enslaved, but it is. It's one of the stories that we just don't hear often.
It was so harsh. It wasn't like what we know of the African slave trade was a lot of disputes between the tribes where in this Chinese slave trade, it was just people walking down the street going, hey, look, there's a guy, grabbing him and then just throwing him on a boat. It was unbelievable.
There's a vast difference with, like you said, with the African slave trade. The Europeans who were doing the enslaving capitalized on the wars that were already going on and said, hey, if you help me get them, then I won't take you. And they're like, all right, cool, you know. Whereas here, like you said, it's literally people taking people off the street and with just enough trickery, then making them sign a contract so it all was above board and legal, supposedly. Yet they were enslaving these people and taking them to Peru. Not just to America to do the trains, which is another story that we do sometimes hear about, laying the tracks.
Yeah, the tracks and
But
stuff.
this story, they're taking them to Peru to basically dig up the guano from the mines and sell it to people. So the book spends a lot of time on the boat.
Yeah.
And it talks about the uprisings that almost happened and didn't happen, and the interconnected politics of the people underneath the boat to the people above boat, because above boat they wanted to keep them healthy.
Well, at least
as opposed to
a percentage
healthy.
Out of I think they had 500 people on the boat and only 300 of them made it to Peru or something.
Right.
So it's they take a lot.
They take a lot of hits, right.
Right.
But they wanted to be able to show a good face once they got to Peru. They cleaned up the boat and acted like the people were they gave them new clothes and things. Said, oh, look, it's all above board. You know, they signed these contracts. They wanted to come here, you know, so that they would have a better chance of selling these people, you know, as opposed to saying, oh, yeah, we picked them off the street. What I really liked about this book was actually China. Bo Si, which is Ah Lung's wife, and how she deals with the silkworms, which, again, something I never heard about, never really read about.
And it's also there's a big view inside of the home life, the family. The family raising the silkworms, it's not just this is my job, I raise silkworms. It's the whole family, and how none of them are really referred to as by names. They're all fourth brother, fourth sister-in-law, you know, or first niece. None of them, it's a very strange way to have a family.
Yeah.
Along with the fact that this is what the family does. The family raises silkworms.
Right.
Which was an interesting
And
perspective
Bo
as well.
Si, being the wife that came from a different family, she was she's known for being excellent at raising these silkworms. And at one point, you think she's going crazy because she's missing her husband who's been taken, and she puts the paper with these silkworms on it onto her body, right, with the eggs of these silkworms onto her body. And she's referring to them as her children and the babies, and you're like, okay, chickadee went a little lulu. But she's actually trying to figure out a way to raise another generation of silkworms so that they can raise more money to get her husband back.
Right.
So it's like even within the confines of that very strict, odd family world, she's doing everything she possibly can to get her husband back. And that was what I thought was so endearing about this book, was the way their relationship showed mostly through her eyes is what I got into. So I gave this book overall, I gave it 3 stars. Nice solid 3. You know, it was good. There were some parts that could have been better, but I think it deserves about 3 stars.
I gave this book 2 stars. Like, I would have given it less, except that I really liked the premise. This is not something that's normally tackled, and I like obscure things. But I felt like the book was really uneven. They spent a lot of time on the boats and like almost no time when he actually gets there. And like the end, it just seems like it was right. Oh, look, I need to be done soon. Hurry, finish. Okay, we're done. And
Right.
I mean, when I was reading it, I literally stopped when I got to the part where he landed and looked at how much of the book was left and was like, oh,
There's not much.
okay, well, all right. And I don't know, it was disappointing. I thought it could have been done better. So
I agree
2
about the ending.
stars.
The ending seemed a bit abrupt. Like, I wanted to see them get. Oh, shh. So 3 stars and 2 stars for God of Luck. And we'll be back with another book momentarily. Welcome back to Hardcover Feedback. For this next book, we have our very first guest reader. Please welcome Miss Brittany Barajas.
Hello, I'm Brittany, and I'm in 6th grade, and I enjoy reading.
Well, thank you for being on the show today.
We're happy to have you.
That's right. Our book that we're reading with Brittany today is Schooled by Gordan Korman. Capricorn Cap Anderson has never watched TV, never tasted pizza, and never even heard of a wedgie. Since he was little, he's lived on a farm commune with his hippie grandma, who has also homeschooled him, named Rain. But when Rain has an accident and has to be hospitalized for a while, Cap has to move in with a guidance counselor and attend the local middle school, where the age-old tradition is that the biggest nerd is nominated for class president.
All right, I'm going to read a little bit of it in here. I don't think I ever would have learned to understand regular school if it hadn't been for trigonometry and tears. There was no TV at Garland, and it wasn't just because our generator barely had enough power to run the lights and refrigerator. Rain said television was a vast wasteland. It lowered our standards until we couldn't tell the difference between bad and good. I would never disagree with Rain, but I thought TNT was fantastic. When I watched it, everything around me seemed to disappear, and the whole world was happening on that little screen. Those people were so real, with true-to-life problems and big decisions that had to be made. I kept wishing that the characters had someone like Rain to turn to in times of trouble, but they didn't. They had their parents, who were even more messed up and confused than the people were. It was a perfect symbol of life outside of Garland, a huge, complicated, and full of hidden traps and pitfalls. Plus, every now and then, the program stops and the TV tells you about all the great things you can buy, like a miracle cream that makes it scientifically impossible to get a pimple.
Capricorn Anderson, okay, first of all, his name tells you a lot about where he came from. You know, this hippie commune where he and his grandmother are the only people left actually living this hippie life, you know. Yeah. So it's kind of very telling, his name. And when he ends up in this regular school, which is, what's the name of the school? Claveridge?
It's like Claveridge, but it's called C Average.
C Average. They always mark out the L every year. It's the tradition. Take out that L. It's C Average. And that tells you, again, about the place where they're going as well. You know, everybody at this school wants to be average. They don't want to be different. They don't want to be noticed. They want to be just average and normal.
Or at least those who aren't, you know, the popular people,
right.
don't want to be noticed because
Right.
of, like you said, the tradition of the biggest loser in school gets to be class president, which is not necessarily a privilege. It's
Not at
you
all.
dread that the entire time. Oh man, I hope I'm not going to be the dork this year.
And up until the time that Capricorn Anderson comes to school, everybody thinks that this kid, what's his name?
Hugh Winkler.
Hugh Winkleman. Everybody thinks that Hugh Winkleman is going to be the biggest nerd and he's going to be class president. So when Cap shows up, then here comes Hugh and he's like, sweet!
Finally.
I'm so not the biggest nerd this year. The book is really cute. There's lots of different layers in terms of different types of characters, and it's narrated by different
people.
Right, different people each have something to say, and they each have their own chapters and things. And it ends up that Capricorn, by living this hippie life and being completely unaware of things that everybody thinks are normal, like money, or how a checkbook works, or what a locker is for, because when he gets his locker, he says, if by locking things away from other people, we're really locking them away from ourselves. There's something really hippified like that, he says, So, but he comes here and he's himself, he's true to himself, and he ends up doing Tai Chi on the front lawn and things like that. Yeah. People slowly, very slowly, but slowly become to say,
They're like Cap fans.
That's not that bad,
He has has groupies.
Exactly, and not only is he inspiring people, but he ends up like saving people as well. There's that one part with the bus driver.
Yeah, my favorite part is definitely like when he saves his bus driver's life. And so one day after he's going home from school, he notices that his bus driver groans and he like rolls over unconsciously.
Like he had a heart attack or something.
Yeah, something like that. And so then Cap just like sprints up to the bus driver, and so then he takes the wheel and he turns that whole bus around and he drives it all the way to the hospital where like the bus driver is revived and everything.
And all the kids are in there going, oh my God, how do you know how to drive? And he's like, I learned on the farm commune by driving a tractor or something
And
like
it's
that.
like all like the radio is just going crazy. Like, what are you doing? Stop driving! He's like,
And the police are on his tail.
no, I'm
Right,
saving
you're
it.
right. The police were chasing him. Like, you have to stop. And he's like, no, I have to get this guy to the hospital.
He's
I'm
gonna
like,
die.
so, and that right there, I think, is a big part of what this book is all about. It's like there are very good things that he learned at this farm commune, how to be self-sufficient. He learned how to drive this tractor, which enabled him to drive this bus and save this person, although we, of course, do not condone 12-year-olds driving buses.
No.
But in the book, it was a good thing, But then at the same time, he has no comprehension of how money works. So as the class president, one of his jobs is to organize the school dance, and he doesn't know how to pay for anything.
Well, he doesn't even know what a dance is. He doesn't know
what
what to
dance
buy, what to,
He's writing checks
food.
willy-nilly for every kind of thing.
Exactly, sure, we'll get a big fog machine and
I
this,
know.
super expensive DJ, and
Go
sure,
for
we'll
it,
go, get like a big food spread.
Right, and all these Cap fans are, coming around, and he ends up using them to buy the things. Like, go for it, you do that, you take care of that, and they're all like, yay, woo,
Whatever you say, Cap.
But one of the things that I really, really thought was very endearing was at the beginning when he first becomes class president. Then the guy the most popular guy who engineers this whole nomination of Capricorn Anderson, basically tells him that he has to learn everybody's name. And
I think
he takes it so seriously. He's like, well, how am I going to learn everybody's name? And he starts going through old yearbooks and things like that.
Studying every night.
Studying every night, right. Who would study your yearbook to learn people's names?
I think that's
This kid
awesome.
would. And by the end of this book, he knows everybody's name, and he says goodbye to each and everyone individually. It's like, you think he's just saying goodbye to everybody, but no, he goes down. Goodbye, Hugh Winkleman. Goodbye, Judy Djibouti, or whatever your name is. I mean, every name he goes down. And I thought that was really endearing. Overall, I personally think that this book was good to read. It's good for middle school age range, but it's also good for
Adults.
Right, thank you.
It's okay. It's one of those books that, it's so timeless. Like the humor is not necessarily angled at a certain age range.
Exactly.
It's for everybody. And the storyline and the characters and the humor and the generation of those growing up during hippie times.
Right, exactly. I give this book 3 stars. It's a nice, solid read, especially for the 6 through 12 age range. And grade, age range, and as well as people who grew up in the hippie days. You know, it has a lot of humor that only adults would actually get from reading this book. So I give it a solid 3 stars.
I gotta give it 4. I mean, I have read numerous books by Gordan Korman, and I have yet to ever be disappointed. He knows how to tell a story. He knows what's funny. He knows when something is, needs to be cut back, when it needs to be serious time. He is an amazing author, and once again, I was not disappointed. 4 stars.
Yeah, I would give it 4 stars because I thought it was like really funny, and I loved how Gordan put it in different people's perspectives, so that it was from a different person's angle each chapter.
Every chapter you got a different view of exactly the same thing that was going on. That was one of the parts that was very well done.
Yeah.
And again, Gordan Korman, like you said, he doesn't disappoint.
No way.
So 2 4s and a 3, and that is Schooled by Gordan Korman. We'll be back for our next book in a minute.
Welcome back. Our final book on the show today is a multicultural mystery called The No. 1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall. The No. 1 Ladies Detective Agency tells the story of a delightfully cunning and enormously engaging Precious Ramotswe, who is drawn to her profession to help people with the problems in their lives. Immediately upon setting up shop in a small storefront in Gaborone, she is hired to track down a missing husband, uncover a con man, follow a wayward daughter, and find a missing boy who may or may not have been kidnapped by witch doctors.
Ooh. The daddy let out a wail. Ay, my daughter, my little baby, happy. A good actor, thought Ma Ramotswe. Yes, it is very sad. She is very sick, and they need lots of blood. But only family will have the right sort. They will have to take about half your blood. You might die, but then you are her father, and we know that you would do this thing for your daughter. Now, could you come quickly, or it would be too late? The daddy opened his mouth and then closed it. Come on, said Ma Ramotswe. The daddy shook his head. No, he said faintly, I won't. You see, I'm not really her daddy. Which is what she was there to find out. Now, Ma Ramotswe, Precious, we'll call her, she was the daughter of her father. Her father taught her all kinds of things. He loved his daughter. He had all these cattle. And when he died, he said, I want you to open a business. And she said, okay, I'm going to be a detective. And he's like, huh? Not exactly what he thought. But she's perfect because she's of the people and she gets in with them. She's kind of a Sherlock Holmes style detective. It's not at all CSI.
Well, we should first point out, because I just realized that we didn't actually say where Gaborone actually is, but this takes place in Botswana, which is a country in Africa.
Exactly.
So it's very important that we state that this woman is becoming a detective because that really wasn't heard of. No one.
Exactly.
Woman detective? What are you talking about?
What?
And when people asked her, well, why would we want a woman detective when we can get a man? She's like, are you kidding me? Women are the most observant people. We see everything. People will tell us anything we can get in anywhere. And she proves it.
Exactly.
She can blend in. Well, she doesn't always blend in,
She
but
doesn't
she
blend, but
can
she
get
moves
the
her
info.
way in,
She
right.
can get the info.
And in fact, that's one of the reasons why she calls it the No. 1 Ladies Detective Agency.
That's
Because
right.
she says, well, if people know it's a lady, they know they'll get the real information.
That's right.
They'll get the good stuff, And she, becomes friends with people who are also in this market square. She moves over this building to be her detective agency. She has this secretary. All of these people are these little characters, and each of these characters are little gems because this story is not a linear story. It's not all one tale. It's a bunch of vignettes, a bunch of small episodes that basically happen as she becomes a detective in this place, which is actually what makes this book perfect for the HBO series. Because if you didn't know, HBO has done a series of this book with Jill Scott playing Precious, which I actually saw one episode of it, even though I don't have, So, so it's actually very well done. Some people complain about the pace of the TV show, saying that it's very slow. the book is slow. That's
It is.
part of its charm, because
It's laid
Botswana
back.
is laid back. It's mellow. It's almost country, even though it's not. And that's, again, one of the charming things about the book, is that the stories, the crimes that are going on are not murders and whatever else, although I won't say anything.
Some of them are a little,
A little
edgy, but then there's the man who wants Mauro Motswe to find out if his daughter, who is, supposed to only be married to whoever he decides, like the predetermined marriage, and she's messing around with some guy, you're going to find out who it is. It's like, oh, well.
Right, and she doesn't really want to find
Yeah,
out,
'cause
but she's like, well, I need to take the case.
Right.
'Cause I'm
And
finding
he's
out.
really
if she's-
wealthy.
And he's very rich. She needs the job. So,
She needs the money.
But then there's also that underlying story about the little boy and whether he was or was not abducted by a witch doctor. And that's important because the author gives a very glowing view of Botswana. It's
Right.
like there are bad things that happen in every place, every city, every country, even Botswana, which in the book is pictured as very perfect. It's pretty. It has this good wholesome values and things like that. There are bad things that happen there. This book does not address those really.
No.
It's the more through rose-colored glasses view
It's like
of Botswana.
It's like a Pleasantville kind of thing.
Exactly.
Like how everything, the ideal sitcom life is
Right.
what is usually addressed with the occasional, problems that may occur.
Exactly. And that's one of the good things, because we see on TV, all we see about any African country on TV pretty much is the bad stuff, the
Right.
war that's going on, the famine, the this, the that, and we don't see the good stuff that happens, so I don't care if people complain, oh, it wasn't realistic, whatever. Of course it's realistic.
Yeah.
It's just this one portion of reality, not the whole reality. And what's wrong with that?
Exactly.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
It's not like anything that's really exciting or normal is going to be a topic of news. Everything is that's negative or, disruptive. That's what's going to be talked about.
Exactly.
You don't think these people are going to have everyday lives? I think they do. And I think that this book was really great about discussing that and revealing those things.
And finding the humor and the interest in those everyday things, like, ooh, is this guy really her father or not? Because
Right.
the whole issue with that is in Botswana, you have to take care of your relatives. Even if it's your third cousin on the left side, if they come and they need help, you have to help them. That's what you do, which leaves the room open for charlatans to come say, oh, I'm related to you and I need help. And then you, being the good person you are, you help them, but are they really your relative or not? So that's that whole first crime that she has to figure out gives you a real insight into how her methods work.
Right.
And it really is very interesting, very much like Sherlock Holmes in terms of her watching and figuring things out. So all in all, I really, really enjoyed this book. I give it 4 stars. I think it's worth reading. It's the first in a series. I think all the books in the series are worth reading, and I would watch the show as well. I think it's an interesting take on something that we don't see often.
I got to give it 3 stars. It's not really my cup of tea. I wouldn't normally read this kind of, I'm not a big mystery reader. So, for what it was, I enjoyed it. It was a very interesting look on things. I got to give it 3 stars.
Okay.
All right.
So we'll recap, and thank you for being with us today. The first book, God of Luck, I gave it 3 stars. Brandy gave it 2.
All right. And then we had Schooled by Gordan Korman, and Kelly gave it 3 stars. I gave it 4 stars, and our guest, Brittany, today gave it 4 stars as well.
And then we have the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. I gave it 4 stars, and Brandy gave it 3. Thank you very much to our guest, Brittany Barajas, for being here with us. If you think you could be a guest on Hardcover Feedback, make sure to contact us, and we'll see about bringing you on. See you next time. Bye.